Hey everyone, I'm Dion with Racers 360. Super excited to be here. Talk to you a little bit about getting ready for the SCCA runoffs at Indianapolis Motor Speedway. Today we're going to do a very brief and quick walkthrough introduction to Indy here. Some of the things to know that it can really help you. If you want to take your driving to the next level, make sure you check out our special package for runoffs racers, where you can join us for a live track walk and guide with two-time IndyCar champion and Penske Racing driver Joseph Newgarden, as well as two same-day turnaround personalized coaching sessions during the runoffs. Here, you get to upload your video to a Racers 360 coach. That night, you get back a personalized coaching session. Talk about how you can improve given your goals, your car, your lines, your driving. Everything's personalized to you. So make sure you check out that package. Without further ado, though, let's start breaking down Indianapolis to get you ready. So obviously at Indy, super long front straightaway. One of the things that surprised me most my first laps here is how narrow the straightaway really is. We all watch the Indy 500, looks super wide, especially when they're going 4 wide, but it actually feels a lot more narrow than that when you're really out there. So just one thing to kind of anticipate is this feeling a little bit smaller, more narrow than you really expect. So where are we looking right now? We're really looking for our braking markers far ahead, but they're going to be up on the fence to our left-hand side. Here we can start to see our braking markers start right here, starting with the 500 board, right? So most cars, as a typical braking marker, are going to be just inside that 500 board. Kind of a good range that we're mostly looking for is starting off at the 500 board and slowly working deeper from there. Obviously, it's hard to talk about how deep you can ultimately go. That kind of depends on your tire, the type of car you're driving, drafting conditions, right? There's so many variables there, but typically we find the 500 board is a great starting off weekend, because ultimately what matters here in this 1-2 section, what really matters is going to be your drive out of turn one. As drivers, we want to maximize our time on full throttle into turn one, and then maximize our time on full throttle out of turn one. So I don't really care as much here about my min corner speed. I really care about trying to go deep, really hard threshold braking when my hands are straight, a little bit later of an apex point so that I can get the car pointed and get out. So one thing we're starting to see here is we do want to highlight our flag stand here just inside the 300 board. You can see here, turn one is going to be one of the more active places that we have traffic that we're working on overtaking or being passed. So there's a lot happening here. Let's find a clean lap and go through it. So you can see here, our driver's just getting down just before the 400 board, braking, just passing the flag stand here. So where are we starting to turn in? A great turn-in marker that we like to use is this 100 board. But one of the challenges here is our braking markers and our visual reference points, our flag stand are all on the left-hand side, but we really want our eyes looking down to this apex point. So make sure you're picking those up with your peripheral vision and really focusing down to that apex point here. So again, turn one, we want to be focused on a late apex point. So typically we like to apex just past the middle part of this curve and a little bit later of an apex so we can really unwind the steering wheel, get the power. And I like to use almost every inch of road out here on the left, because turn two is a relatively easy full speed flat out corner as well. So boom, working it back to full throttle as early as possible, really coming back, using this curve, letting the car drift out wide into turn three. One of the challenging aspects of the first part of this racetrack is how far away our flag stands are. So here I'm pointing out our flag stand here for turn three, and at least it's to the inside where you should be looking, but they're pretty far away from the racetrack, away from the racing line, which is not the norm for most racetracks that we're going to. So just something to anticipate. Coming through turn three, easy full throttle through this section, but as we come out of turn three, start to let the car drift up all the way to the outside. Another corner that really is challenging for our eyes. So we want to be looking into the apex point for turn four, but while we do that, we need to let the car start to drift out all the way wide so we can really maximize our turn-in point for turn four. And turn four is going to be a mix of entry speed and exit speed, because we have a drive or a pretty good little straightaway here through turn 5 down to turn 6 braking zone, right? So we're coming in, letting the driver does a great job letting it drift wide. Whoops. Again, another corner here. Let's go find that spot again where the flag stand is actually really difficult to see. It's very far away. So here you can see just ever so slightly. That's where our flag stand is in turn 4 to the inside of the racetrack, right? And you can see how far away that is from where our apex point is for turn 4 as well. So really coming in, super light on the brakes, rolling an entry speed, every inch of the curb right here, working it back to full throttle. And then again, a little bit of a drive to the turn 6 braking point. Turn 5 is usually relatively easy, flat out or close to it. Coming to turn 6, let's point out again, where is our flag stand into turn 6? It's going to now be the outside of the racetrack, right about here where this box is. So use your peripheral vision, take a look for that. But our eyes are in, looking early in for turn 6. And turn 6 is a pretty challenging little corner here that we don't often see. We normally see the Indy cars use the chicane to our left onto the front straightaway here. Actually, when we were racing at IMSA, this is the format that we used. And I always found turn 6 a little bit more challenging because it's a really long corner, but it's a corner where I need to come out on and hold the car pretty close to the left on exit to set up for turn 7 onto the mini straightaway, which then leads into our overtaking zone. Actually, sorry, 6A is the right-hander onto the overtaking zone that leads into our next overtaking zone into turn 7. So coming into 6 here, we want to get to the right side of the road. We really want to attack the entry here so we can trail brake deep as possible into this corner. Anytime we're trying to hold the car to the inside on the exit, I, as a race car driver, want to try and trail brake deeper into the corner so I can get more rotation. I can keep the weight on the front end here. So we really want to attack this entry point, come in an apex. I want enough speed here so the car takes me just a little bit off the inside. I think our car could have been just a little bit wider now, and then boom, feed the throttle back in here. But notice our driver holds it left so they can set up here for 6A, because what it really matters through this section is I want to get as good of a drive as possible out of 6A, because that's what leads onto this next mid straightaway, which leads into a good potential overtaking zone into turn 7. Once again here, our flag stand is going to be to the inside of the racetrack, so at least it's in the general vicinity of where we're looking. So coming out of 6, hold it mostly to the left. We don't need to be perfectly to the grass, but pretty close to it so we can maximize our run through 6A. A driver does a great job here using the curb, really maximizing the radius, and then letting the car drift out way wide using every inch of road. Great place here to take a breath, work it back to the right side of the road into our turn 7. Big brake zone here, but it's a really quick brake zone. Hard on the brakes, immediately getting off because we can roll a good amount of speed through turn 7, which makes it a tricky overtaking zone. Why turn 1 is such a good overtaking zone is because it's a really long, big brake zone into a hairpin. Turn 7 is a little bit trickier because, yes, it's a big brake zone, but it's a higher speed corner. So it's a shorter brake zone, which means we have less time to really get, all the way alongside that car when we make that move to the inside. So this is why it's a corner that catches out a lot of drivers when it comes to overtaking. It's trickier than we often anticipate because of that shorter brake zone. So coming in here, really, if we back this up a little bit, braking zone, braking markers, you can see up on the fence, similar to turn 1, just on the right-hand side here. Great visual reference point. If I keep backing this up, so a little bit more is going to be that bridge that we kind of come under, bridge, be all the way back to the right-hand side of the road. Perfect. Looking for that 500 board. Here's the 500 board. Typically braking, about that 400 board is going to be a good reference point. Starting at the 500 board, start working deeper from there. Another great reference point here is our turning points coming just before the end of the curb here on our right-hand side. So you can see our driver starting to bend it in just about a car length before the end of this curb, really focused into that turn 7 apex point. Boom, coming in, using that apex curb. The great thing at Indy is most of the apex curbs are relatively flat. We're going to start to show some that aren't, that maybe we want to avoid, but most of these are relatively flat and car friendly. So what we're really focused on in this section here is the 7, 8, 9, 10 section. So I like to work this backwards. So really what I want to be able to do is set myself up to get a good run through turn 10 to hopefully be full throttle or pretty close through full throttle through 11 into the turn 12 brake zone. So when we're trying to work this backwards, that means I want to have the car all the way to the left when I'm turning in for turn 10. That's really what I want to focus on here. So every one of these corners, I'm sacrificing just a little bit of speed to be able to do that. So 7, notice how we're not using all the road to our right-hand side. It's about finding the right balance between speed and how much road to the right that I want to use. So notice, and this depends a little bit on the car. Higher horsepower, lower grip car, I might sacrifice a little bit more speed and hold it a little bit more left here. Lower horsepower, lighter car, higher grip, I might even use a little bit more road to our right-hand side, especially if my tires are new and I can get through this next right-hander with more speed. Once again, using all this curb here in turn 8, setting up for turn 9. This is where we want to start to really sacrifice the car, holding it, making sure we can set up all the way to the left through turn 10 here to get that run. Again, make sure we got our eyes looking in for that flag stand towards the inside of turn 10. It's kind of blind on exit, so it's always good to make sure we know that we're good through here. Coming in, notice how our driver doesn't get all the way to the left. I think I would have liked to see maybe just a tick more to the left through here, set up through turn 10, using this curb. You can see they put their whole car in this curb. This one's going to be a little bit bigger of a curb, but if you can use it, absolutely opens up that radius, and it's all about getting back to full throttle here so that you can get that run all the way to turn 12. Turn 11, when the conditions are good, it's flat in almost every car. What we've started to find, at least in my experience with GT3 cars, which have kind of a pretty equal balance between power and not that much aero, but a little bit of aero, is sometimes we had a little bit of a lift here as the tires started to go old. So I wouldn't anticipate this being completely easy full throttle unless you're in a lower horsepower car. Higher horsepower cars, especially if you don't have that aero, this might be a little bit harder to hold at full throttle than you would think. Again, just pointing out another flag stand here to the inside turn 11. Set up to turn 12. As soon as we come through here, we want to start to let the car be free, get out to the wall, and you can start to see our next brake zone markers up here again on that fence and our next flag markers here. So we want to get all the way up to the outside here relatively quickly so we can brake with straight hands into turn 12. So our driver does a good job getting all the way to the outside, straight hands, braking just past that 300 board, really looking in. And we want a pretty late apex, pretty late turning point into turn 12 here as well, because again, we want to potentially, depending on the car, sacrifice a little bit of speed to be able to sit back up a little bit more to the right-hand side to set up for turn 13. So notice how our driver doesn't use all the road. This, again, depends a little bit on what car we're driving. If I'm in a spec Miata or a lower horsepower car, I'm going to use more track to the left because I have a little bit more time to work it back to the right-hand side of the road, and it matters a little bit less for 13. If I'm in a higher horsepower car, I'm going to start to sacrifice a little bit more speed to be able to really get more back to the right for 13. So coming through 13 here, boom, driver gets all the way to the right-hand side of the road. The reason why it starts to become more important in certain cars is whether 14 or not onto that front straightaway is full throttle. If 14, you have a little bit of a lift, then you can get by with maybe attacking 12 a little bit more and not worrying about 13 quite as much. But turn 14 is going to be full throttle for likely most cars. And if that's the case, then it's all about your drive out of turn 13. That's going to carry you all the way to turn 1. So that's why here our driver sacrifices just a little bit of speed through 12, doesn't use quite as much road on exit, so they can get all the way to the right side of the road to really open up the radius, use every inch of the curb here, which is great to maximize that drive and get back to full throttle as early as possible onto the front straightaway here through through the right-hander 14. The other thing to point out here is this is also where our pit lane entry is here. So we can start to see pit lane entry starts here. So just one thing to think about, if I'm diving into pit lane, don't be making that apex, kind of hold it wide, set yourself up to really drive it hard, hopefully into pit lane. So boom, if you're on the racing line, all over this curve, back to full throttle as early as possible, using every inch of the road, and then setting up for 14. So again, you'll probably see if you've watched the IndyCar races here on the road course, turn 14 can really catch out drivers, especially as the tires start to get old. right? There's a little bit less grip here than you would think because we're not on the banking yet, right? So anticipate this being a little bit lower grip than you would think. If the conditions are right, the tires are good, and a lower horsepower car, it's pretty close to full throttle, likely full throttle. When it starts to get greasy out during the heat of the day, if you're not, especially true in a higher horsepower, lower grip car, you might be anticipating that this may not be full throttle for you, that you might need a little bit of breather, working it back, but really focus on getting your eyes up, letting the car be as free as possible so that you're stressing those rears as little as possible onto that front straightaway, getting that drive onto the front straightaway, and then hopefully seeing that checkered flag, maybe kissing the bricks as well and winning some races. So that's been our kind of intro guide to Indy. Hopefully that all makes sense. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to reach out to us at team@racers360.com. If you're interested in how we can help you prep for the runoffs or help you during the runoffs, and sign up for our special runoffs package so that you can work with Joseph Newgarden, learn personally from him with the track guide, just reach out to us. We're here to help. And best of luck. Can't wait to see you out there for a fun weekend at Indy.